York is flipping out. Oh gosh, New York just, they can't manage this, right? Because they really don't like that Donald Trump is the president of the United States right now. And they really don't like that the feds are moving in, which, by the way, they have all the authorization to do, because the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals said, yeah, you know what, California, you're fine in terms of, or rather, Donald Trump, you're fine in terms of nationalizing the National Guard, federalizing the National Guard, as they had to do last week because of all the protests that were going on. Well, New York doesn't like that, because you see, New York thinks it's its own little island. It can do its own little thing. I mean, Manhattan is an island, right? And Brad Lander, who's running for mayor of New York, he had a little bit of a dust up, of course, yesterday. You know about that, where he got cuffed and hauled away by the feds because he tried to interfere with an arrest that was going on for somebody who was believed to be in the country illegally and had committed a crime. So here we are today with Kathy Hochul, governor of New York, trying to fan the flames here, trying to set up some kind of state versus federal disaster, because she's going to use taxpayer money in the state of New York. This is fascinating, considering that New Yorkers get that, or are looking, I should say, for that SALT deduction back, right? They want to make sure that they can deduct their state taxes from their federal taxes, or at least a certain portion of it. Well, I don't think that's going to fly, because now you want to use taxpayer dollars to fight the feds? Come on. All right, here's Kathy. It's a little teeny bit hard to hear, so I encourage you to turn up the volume. I'm going to watch it together with you. It's a quick clip.
That are walking out of this courthouse, taken away from their families. They don't have the attention. They don't have the lawyers. And that's why the state of New York is providing $50 million to cover legal services for people who are finding themselves in this situation.
Thank you, by the way, Whiskey Dale, for the generosity. And you believe it, I'm not giving up on this story. And this bit from Kathy Hochul, I mean, this is total political theater once again. They know the rules, they know the laws, they know the Constitution, and yet they're sitting there saying, well, we're going to defend these guys, and we are not going to help the feds. We are not going to actually cooperate with them. I don't know what kind of island you think you're living on, really, in the state of New York or in California or in any of these states that think that they can sit there and fly in the face of federal law and get away with it. I'm sorry, the law is the law. And Brad Lander found that out yesterday when he tried to go in between the feds who were arresting someone believed to be in the country illegally and having believed to have committed a crime. He stands in the way of that. And they said, okay, buddy, you're out of here, cuffs and all,
You don't have to. I'm not obstructing. I'm standing right here in the hallway. I asked to see the judicial warrant. By asking for a judicial warrant? You don't have the authority to arrest U.S. citizens. Ask me for a judicial warrant.
We go too. Sorry. No way. I'm safe. Where are you taking him?
So this video came from his wife.
I'm Press Secretary. Where are you taking the comptroller of the New York, the city of New York?
And with what authority?
And with what authority?
And where are you taking them?
The security detail is number one. Is going to go with him, all right? Hang on for his number one. Hold on. Brett,
number one.
That's his number one
Okay,
right
so
here,
you can
right?
see him getting cuffed, taken
Thank you.
out. You know, I will say to his credit, at least he did not physically push himself against the ICE agents, like, the lady in New Jersey, La Monica MacGyver. I have to say that every single day because it's just so much fun to say. La Monica trying to be the next AOC, getting herself up on a little bit of a platform. She's now facing 17 years. Alina Habba's like, listen, you don't mess with us. You just don't do it, because that is effectively suggesting you might be guilty of assault on a federal agent, which carries with it up to 17 years in federal prison. So at least Brad Lander didn't actually look like he was assaulting anybody there. So it was a rather peaceful cuffing, if you would, and a hauling away. But the point is, the law is the law. And so the feds have the ability to go in and do this, and you can't stand in the way of that. And yet Kathy Hochul losing it, the governor of New York, she's got the $50 million, right, that she's setting aside, and she just lost it with some obscenities in there. Oh my gosh, Kathy, really watch her language, okay? As she tried to talk to people yesterday, having just returned from Little Haiti. Yeah, she went on and on about Little Haiti. I don't know if that's going to play in the rest of the state the way she's hoping it will. But you know what? That's why we have elections. Vote her out. Here you go.
Do you want to know what I really think? Please. It's bull. How dare they take an elected official who's been going down there for weeks to escort people who are afraid to walk into a courthouse in the United States of America. So Brad Lander has stepped up to be a guiding help for them. And this is what happens to him. What the hell is happening to this country? I just left Little Haiti. People are being traumatized. Small businesses, people walking down the street. When I was there in August, the streets were mobbed. People were walking down the sidewalks. There were vendors everywhere. The traffic was crowded. Today, there was silence. People are living in fear. One woman just told me the ICE agents are going in and out of buildings there.
Well, you know what? Isn't that what people voted for? I mean, I hate to say it. I mean, nobody wants people that are, well, I shouldn't say that actually. The numbers are actually reflecting, the polls are reflecting something else. In fact, almost half the state of New York believes that if you're here in this country illegally, that you need to be deported. But overwhelmingly, 79% of New Yorkers actually believe that if you have committed a crime and you are here in this country illegally, then yes, you should be deported. I mean, heck, even Whoopi Goldberg on The View couldn't disagree with that one and made it loud and clear that, yeah, I mean, if you've committed a crime and you're here illegally, then, you know, that's the way the cookie crumbles, so to speak. Anyway, Elise Stefanik, the representative from New York, writing here, $50 million in New Yorkers' hard-earned taxpayer dollars are being used for illegal migrants' legal fees because of Kathy Hochul's illegals. First, New Yorkers' last failed leadership in New York. You know, I'll tell you, she was wonderful. I'm actually not playing it because I want to look at it. It's actually almost very graphic in terms of what she describes. If you would, Elise Stefanik, it shook me a bit because she's talking about the horrors that some innocent New Yorkers have had to deal with. And perhaps you know where I'm going when you think about the subway incident, et cetera. But she described them in rather very rich detail. And so it's a lot to hear. But Elise Stefanik had Kathy Hochul there for questioning on the Hill just last week. And so she put these questions to her. And I'll tell you, Hochul didn't even know who these migrants were that had committed these heinous crimes. And that's pretty telling in and of itself. It was quite an expose of Elise Stefanik. She's very good at that. Don't forget, she took down the lady who ran Harvard, right? Claudine Gay owns the end of her career to one Elise Stefanik, and perhaps Kathy Hochul will too. I mean, I don't know about you, but I could see Elise Stefanik at this point possibly running for governor of New York and winning that. So she just tore her apart in hearings last week, and then it's like it was just made to order because Kathy's out there saying we're going to take all this money and we're going to send it to illegal migrant fees. Now, look, here's the deal. Don't forget, the Supreme Court recently ruled that Donald Trump could revoke the status, the immigration status that was awarded to some 520,000 people, it might be 532,000 people. It was upwards of 500,000 people that Biden brought into this country. And many of them were from Haiti, as well as some Latin American countries. And he said, you know what? We are not going to allow for that anymore. So all of those people that had been brought here under that status, they are now no longer welcome. And Kathy Hochul wants to fight that, even though the Supreme Court said otherwise. So you understand, you're really seeing this kind of state versus federal government play out in real time. I mean, here's another headline from the other day. Trump to flood big cities like Los Angeles and NYC with ICE agents in the single largest mass deportation program in history. Here is his commentary. He talked about how ICE officers have shown incredible strength and determination, even in the face of all this discord, right? Because they don't exactly have the lawmakers from some of these states on their side. We saw that recently as yesterday when we talked about how Letitia James is out there demanding to know if cops in, say, Oswego, New York, cooperated at all with the feds. And then she wants a list of who did and what they did, etc. this is getting really weird. And I'm going to remind you, and we can go through the Constitution again, but you know who has the power in this, and it's not Kathy Hochul, and it's not Letitia James. Anyway, he said, look, they're going to continue going on. They're going to continue doing their jobs. We've got a lot of deportation to do because it is too dangerous for everyday Americans that are here working hard, and this is what I was elected to do. So places like Los Angeles, Chicago, New York, very, very, very blue places, right? Very liberal places. He wants ICE and Border Patrol all in there doing their jobs in the inner cities and getting anybody who is a problem, who is here illegally, has committed a crime, believed to have committed a crime. He wants that dealt with. Okay, so you're talking about what would be a really, really big undertaking. Some 20 million people coming here illegally under Biden. And we know that this was strange, okay? Strange. Because historically, Democrats had actually never even been for that. We talked yesterday about President Obama having deported somewhere around 1,000 people a day. And this was a very big cause of his. And he laid it out and said, look, the law is the law. And until you change the law, I'm here to enforce the law. Congress is here to enforce the law. Donald Trump says the same thing, and they flip out. Suddenly there are legal fees and funds to the tune of $50 million costing New York taxpayers so that Kathy Hochul can fight this battle, maybe on a national stage because she wants a little bit more attention. I'm telling you, we have a problem. Letitia James, Kathy Hochul, Gavin Newsom, all cut from the same cloth, all trying to take on the federal government because they hate Trump. And so this will not end well for them. Letitia James out there suing along with 24 others, a whole bunch of states decided to band together and sue Donald Trump, the federal government, because they do not believe that the federal government, this is in defense of California, can actually nationalize or federalize the National Guard. But I got news for them. I got big news for them because something just happened, rather important, ladies and gentlemen. Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals siding with, what do you know, Donald Trump and his administration. This coming out just last night. Here we go. Let's take a look. Appeals court seems inclined to let Trump control National Guard in LA for now. A 3-judge panel sounded skeptical of California's arguments that President Trump should return control of National Guard troops to the state. So this is a big deal. Again, just coming forward last night. Let me see if I can get this on the screen for you. This is from the New York Times, and it must have killed the New York Times to have to admit this. But the Ninth Circuit, which I should also remind you is known to be historically insanely liberal, okay? We're talking West Coast, lefty stuff. And yet the Ninth Circuit, in this 65-minute hearing that they had, the 3-judge panel, they came out and said, well, yeah, like constitutionally, the president does have this right. And you know why the president has this right. We've been through it. They used this thing, the Title 10 U.S. Code 12406, which allows for, it's a federal statute, allowing for a president to call into federal service members and units of National Guard in such numbers as he considers necessary to execute the laws of the United States. Okay, so this was a big deal. He did this, and they were like, you can't. I mean, you saw Gavin Newsom. You can't. Have some decency, Mr. President. You can't. And he's like, all these guys are going to be out here by noon on Friday. Well, it turns out, no, they weren't, because even though Gavin Newsom went and took this up in the court, even though that particular judge said, okay, Trump, you can't nationalize or federalize the National Guard, that then went to the appellate court. And it was on the Friday before the No Kings protest weekend. And on Friday, the liberal Ninth Circuit came out and said, you know what? For now, it stays. And we're going to look at it again next week. Well, they looked at it yesterday. And they're going to look at it again tomorrow. But right now, they're making the decision that, guess what? Donald Trump has that power. So New York, get ready. Letitia James, you can band together with all those states and try and create your own little union. But guess what? The Supreme Court of the United States is going to side with the feds. Let me be really clear on that. Because if you don't have a federal government that has the ability to put the laws that are on the books into place, then you're going to have a really big problem. All right, so this is the deal. I get it. They don't want the National Guard in New York. They don't want the National Guard in California. But if you're not enforcing the law, if you're standing in the way of the feds trying to enforce the law, then guess what you're going to get? You're going to get what you get. You're not going to get upset, as they say. That is what is going to happen. So Kathy, good luck. Letitia, good luck. Gavin, good luck. You can stomp and fight and throw a big temper tantrum and maybe get the law changed. But the law is the law. And so if you're not enforcing it, then guess what? Yes, the president has every right to say, I'm going to take over here. And by the way, historically it has happened. Think 1963, George Wallace, Alabama, okay? Where they wouldn't allow for integration at a particular college. And so what happened? They had to send in the troops, so to speak. You had to send in the federal troops. Now, in that particular case, I believe they were able to use the Insurrection Act. They also had a court order. But again, it gets back to where is the power? If Congress has the power to make the laws, and they do, and they make the laws and they say that you cannot have people illegally in the country, then who carries that out? The federal government is in charge of carrying that out. Why? Oh, because, the federal government is in charge of things like immigration. And we went through this yesterday, and I don't need to do it all with you again, but constitutionally, this is where we are, okay? Constitutionally, this is what happens. You've got all the power with the feds over the states, in part because of the Commerce Clause. You also have the Supremacy Clause. You have the Naturalization Clause. You name it. The power is with the federal government when it comes to immigration. So Kathy, you can sit there and say, well, we're sanctuary, we're this, we're that. It doesn't matter. And that, again, has been proven out in the courts, 2012 in Arizona, where they tried to say that. And ultimately, what was decided was all this sanctuary business. No, it's not going anywhere. And so now you're in a moment where Letitia James is actually trying to stand in the way of federal government, where Kathy Hochul is standing in the way of federal government. And this is a big deal, okay? They kept saying that Donald Trump wants some kind of, war, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, wait a second, who wants what? You guys are the ones that are doing this. Let's be really clear. You guys are now the problem. Amazing, amazing, amazing. I got to hand it to Arnold Schwarzenegger because he went on to The View and tried to explain this to these ladies. Actually, he did it in a different way. He didn't get really legal or anything on them. He actually just explained that, part of being an immigrant is acting a certain way and recognizing that you're a guest. We're going to get to that. They were totally stunned into silence, which is amazing. And I'm like, this guy, I know Arnold's had his issues and said some things in the past that not necessarily sit so well with a lot of people, including me. But nonetheless, he really outdid himself on The View, and I want to show you that clip. But before I do, remember, we are completely independent here on the Trish Regan Show. We love being independent, and part of being independent is having great advertisers like our friends over at American Hartford Gold. You can call 1-844-495-1115 to learn more about investing in gold today. You can go to Trish Loves Gold. The great thing about these guys is you can get up to $15,000 with qualifying offers in free silver when you invest in gold, and you just, name drop a little and mention Trish. So go check that out today. You can text Trish to 65532 as well, 65532, and you'll get more information about all of this. I mean, I do see gold as one of those investments that is good through thick and through thin. I'm just going to check gold prices right now as we look at a market that's recovering from yesterday, and sure enough, gold basically even, but it had been, let's see, maybe yesterday it was up a little bit. It's one of those things that I tend to buy when it goes down. Check it out there. TrishLovesGold.com. Really, really good stuff. Meanwhile, another just heads up I wanted to give you is we've been looking at right now, as you know, we've been looking at, let me put this on the screen in the proper place. There we go. It's almost there, right? ProtectProsperity.com. We've been talking about how they're trying to get the bill through the House and the Senate, and it's really critical in terms of those tax cuts that they get renewed. I mean, I'm fingers crossed, right? Fingers crossed. I'm pretty sure it's going to happen, but and I think that this is why Donald Trump was elected, in part to deal with the economy, as well as the immigration issue. So I'm hopeful, but it's not a sure thing yet. And I think it's really important. You know me, I've never met a tax cut I don't like, but all that said, it's critical for the country and for our economy that we do get these tax cuts. And the great folks over at AFP are just terrific. We love them, and they're so insightful and knowledgeable. And they have a team there at Protect Prosperity. I'd encourage you to check it out because it gives you a lot more information on the importance of the tax cuts. You can get involved at a grassroots level if you so desire. But I just think, look, we need all the help we can get economically speaking, do we not? And speaking of all the help we can get, I need all the vitamins I can get. Balance in Nature, that's what I take. You can take it as well. 35% off with code word Trish. Just call them, 1-800-246-8751, 1-800-246-8751, or go to balanceinnature.com. Use code word Trish, 35% off, plus free shipping, plus money back guarantee. So no harm, no foul. Balance in Nature, just one of the great ways to help you stay healthy. Besides your water, besides your exercise, besides eating right, this is one of the tricks. So check it out at balanceinnature.com.